hard, then slowly lifted her eyes to Will, then to the man across from her. He asked something I could tell by his expression. And Sarah? She laughed. Not a full laugh. Not the kind that fills a room. It was light, dismissive. The kind of laugh you give when you're waving something away. She reached out, nudged the ring aside like it was some misplaced trinket, and said something that made Ryan, I'd learn his name later, chuckle and nod. Maybe she said I was a jealous ex. Or maybe she called it a mix-up. Whatever she said, it worked. The people around them started talking again. The moment passed. The world moved on. But I didn't, because I saw her hands. They were shaking. Just enough for the glass to tremble as she lifted it. Just enough for her to switch hands when she brought it to her lips. Her smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was doing what Sarah did best, controlling the narrative, turning the truth into something more comfortable. And for a while it worked, at least on the surface. But I know her. I know the tells. The nervous tapping of her fingers, the way her shoulders tense when she's hiding something. That wasn't the look of a woman caught in an awkward situation. That was the look of guilt. I watched them for 15 more minutes. He leaned in close, laughed at her stories, brushed her hand when he thought no one was looking. She let him, smiled at him like she used to smile at me, and the whole time, my ring just sat there on the edge of the napkin, untouched, like it didn't belong to her anymore. Eventually, I stood and left the bakery. My legs felt like lead. I wasn't angry. Not yet. It was something worse, confirmation. That deep, bitter knowing that something sacred had cracked. And no matter how she spun it, no matter what excuse she gave when I finally confronted her, I'd always remember that moment. How effortlessly she'd shifted the story, how quickly she buried the truth beneath charm and misdirection. But her hands gave her away. They always do. The next morning, I woke up before Sarah did. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, the early sunlight stretching thin across our bedroom walls like it didn't want to touch anything. She was asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even, peaceful, like nothing had happened, like the night before was just another Thursday, and she wasn't sitting across from some guy at Hudson's, pretending not to recognize her own wedding ring. I turned my head to look at her. Her arm was slung lazily across her stomach. No ring on her finger. That detail stung more than I expected. When we first got married, she used to twist it absent-mindedly when she talked. Said it felt heavy in a comforting way. Somewhere along the way, the weight must have changed. She stirred and mumbled something about needing coffee. I got up without a word, walked to the kitchen, and stared at the coffee pot as it filled. I should have said something right then. I could have asked where she'd gone last night, why she hadn't mentioned meeting anyone, why she didn't wear the green dress for me anymore. I could have asked about Ryan, or the ring, or why her hands were shaking like she'd seen a ghost. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I poured 2 mugs, brought hers to the bedroom, and forced myself to act normal. And that's when everything started falling into place. Not because she changed overnight, but because I finally started noticing. Things that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Like her so-called gym nights. They'd started about 4 months ago. First, it made sense. She'd always talked about wanting to take better care of herself. Said the late-night sessions were easier because the gym was empty and peaceful. I believed her. Even admired her discipline. But then I remembered the photos. The mirror selfies. Most of them were normal, just her in workout gear, headphones in, hair in a ponytail. But there was one I couldn't forget. I'd scrolled past it back then without thinking. She was standing near the dumbbell rack, making a playful duck face, captioned, "Late night hustle, flexed biceps, sweat droplets." I'd liked it, left a dumb comment, something like, "Save some gains for me." But now I remembered the reflection. Not hers, his. In the mirror behind her, near the edge of the frame, there was a man's wrist. Barely visible. He was holding a phone, wearing a dark braided bracelet I didn't recognize. At the time, I assumed it was a stranger. Coincidence. Now, I wasn't so sure. And the bracelet. I'd seen it before. On Ryan's wrist. Last night at Hudson's. Then there were the business trips. That one hit me like a slow burn. Sarah worked in regional marketing, which meant travel was part of the deal. I never questioned it. She'd bring me back airport souvenirs, those little gift shop mugs with city names on them, and she'd always text pictures of her hotel view. But the receipts told a different story. I found them while cleaning out the laundry room cabinet, where she kept old mail, expired coupons, takeout menus. There were 3 hotel receipts tucked into the back of an envelope, different dates, but the same location. A boutique hotel downtown. Not in Dallas. Not in Austin. Here. 20 minutes from our house. One was from a Thursday. One from a Sunday. One from the week she told me she was in Houston giving a presentation. All charged to her personal card. Not the company one. I remember sitting on the floor with the envelope in my hand, the hum of the dryer in the background, feeling like the walls had tilted just slightly. I put everything back exactly where I found it. Then there were the clothes. Sarah wasn't materialistic. At least, not in the way that screamed designer label or flaunted on Instagram. But she had always had good taste, simple, elegant. Lately, though, new dresses had started appearing. Not casual ones. High heels I'd never seen before. A crimson halter dress that still had the tag. A perfume I didn't recognize. Sharp and musky. Nothing like the floral scents she used to wear. I asked about them once. She smiled and said she'd treated herself with her bonus. Why? Don't you like them? And I did. I just didn't like why she had them. Even the way she kissed me changed. That was the strangest part. She still kissed me goodbye on the cheek, usually. Sometimes on autopilot. But it didn't carry weight anymore. It was like someone flipping a light switch, not because they needed light, but because they were supposed to. She became more careful with her phone, too. Always on silent. Face down. She used to leave it on the couch or in the kitchen. Now it was glued to her side like an extra limb. I started to notice when she typed messages with her thumbs tucked close, when she angled the screen away from me, even during something innocent like watching TV. One night, she got up around midnight, claiming she forgot to respond to a client email. She went to the living room with her laptop. I gave it 20 minutes, then followed. Quiet. Careful. She wasn't working. She was laughing at something on her phone. A video, maybe. A meme. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Then she typed something and leaned back, smiling to herself. When she saw me, she jumped slightly. Couldn't sleep? I asked. She locked the screen fast. Just catching up on stuff. Anything funny? I asked, gesturing toward her phone. She hesitated. Oh, just some random TikTok. You wouldn't get it. And maybe I wouldn't have. But I knew it wasn't TikTok. I went back to bed that night and stared at the ceiling again, just like I had that morning. Only this time my mind was racing. Every story, every explanation, what once seemed harmless now felt like puzzle pieces falling into place. And the more I looked, the more pieces I found. The nights she came home just a little too tipsy from girls' night. The earrings she lost twice after dinner with coworkers. The way she started showering the moment she got home, even before saying hi. I used to chalk it up to long days and city grime. Now I wasn't so sure. I also noticed the passwords had changed. Our streaming account, her iCloud, even the shared Dropbox where we kept old trip photos and documents. Everything locked. Everything private. She claimed it was due to an email breach at work, and that her company made her change everything. Maybe that was true. But trust has a funny way of eroding. Once you stop believing the little things, everything becomes suspect. And I started second-guessing myself, too. Was I imagining it? Was I letting my insecurities project shadows where there were none? Was I becoming paranoid? Then I'd remember the ring on that cocktail napkin. Her face when she saw it. The way she kept smiling, even though her fingers trembled around the glass. No, I wasn't imagining anything. This wasn't about one night at a bar. This had been building. And now that I'd started seeing it, I couldn't unsee it. Something inside me shifted after that. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to be sure, really sure, because once I crossed that line, there was no going back. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. After weeks of noticing little cracks in our life, the blow finally landed. It didn't come from a confrontation or from some slip of the tongue on Sarah's part. It came in the form of an email from someone I'd never expected to hear from. Kelly, Ryan's wife. Her message was short but sharp. Jason, you don't know me, but you need to see this. I've attached photos. I'm sorry. I sat at my desk staring at the words, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Kelly, Ryan's wife. Until that moment, he'd only been the man from Hudson's to me, a shadow with a name. Now, suddenly, there was a whole other person attached to him, a wife who was just as blindsided as I'd been. My hand hovered over the mouse for a long time before I clicked on the first photo. Sarah, in Ryan's apartment, her hair wet from a shower, wearing one of his t-shirts that was far too big for her. She was barefoot, sitting cross-legged on the edge of his couch, scrolling through her phone with an expression so casual it hurt. She looked comfortable. At home. The second photo was worse. She was asleep in his bed. Her wedding ring was nowhere in sight. The sheets tangled around her like they belonged to her. Ryan wasn't in the frame, but I could see his arm on the pillow beside her. Same braided bracelet I'd noticed in the mirror selfie months ago. The timestamp on the photo was 1:37 a.m. On a night she told me she was too tired to work late and going to sleep early. I kept clicking. Another photo. Her standing in his kitchen making coffee, hair tied up in a messy bun. One of those small domestic gestures you do when you're comfortable somewhere. Another. Her carrying a bag of groceries from her car to his front door. Another. Her opening the blinds in his living room, sunlight spilling across her face. Each image chipped away at the thin layer of denial I'd been clinging to. This wasn't a fling in a hotel or a drunken mistake. She was living a second life. Parallel one. In his space. With his things. Behaving like she belonged there. I scrolled back up to Kelly's message and saw there was a second attachment. A PDF titled Timeline. PDF. My stomach dropped. I opened it. It was a neat list of dates, times, and places. Receipts from restaurants. Uber logs. *TS of text messages between Sarah and Ryan. In one *T, she wrote, "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Jason thinks I'm at the gym. Don't stay up too late, babe. Babe." I sat there for a long time, the glow of the screen burning into my eyes. Felt like my body was going cold from the inside out. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, but instead, I just stared. My mind went blank, then filled, then blank again. Kelly had included a phone number at the bottom of the email. Without thinking, I dialed it. She picked up on the second ring. "Jason?" Her voice was soft but steady, like she'd been rehearsing this. "Yes," I managed. "I got your email." "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I debated whether to send it, but you deserve to know. We both do." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Two strangers tied together by betrayal. "How long?" I asked finally. "Months," she said. "Maybe longer. I hired someone to follow Ryan. That's how I got the pictures. I recognized your wife right away. I thought you should see what I've been living with." I rubbed my forehead. "Thank you," I whispered. She hesitated. "There's more. If you want it." "More?" "I have messages, bank records, things Ryan left open on his computer. I think Sarah's involved in more than just an affair." The room tilted slightly. "What do you mean?" "I'll send it to you," she said. "You'll understand when you see it." When the call ended, I sat back in my chair, staring at nothing. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen was suddenly deafening. I thought I was prepared for confirmation. I wasn't. Seeing Sarah with Ryan in photos was one thing. Hearing another woman, his wife, speak with the same cracked voice I'd been hiding for weeks was another. I opened the photos again, scrolling slowly this time, noticing every detail I'd missed. Her ring finger bare, her sneakers by his front door, a sticky note on his fridge with her handwriting, a paperback book on his nightstand, the one she'd told me she'd lost last month. All those business trips, all those late nights at the gym, all those new dresses, they weren't just suspicious now. They were proof. Hard, undeniable proof. I felt a strange calm settle over me, like the eye of a storm. The questions I'd been torturing myself with. Was I imagining things? Was I paranoid? Was there still a chance she was telling the truth? All fell silent. There was no truth left to salvage. Sarah was in a relationship with another man. In his home. In his bed. Acting like she belonged there. And she'd been lying to me, straight-faced, for months. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing how much energy she must have spent crafting the illusion. The careful explanations. The perfectly timed texts. The way she'd still kiss me on the cheek in the mornings. Still talk about plans for the weekend. Still slip her hand into mine when we walked into a restaurant. As if nothing had changed. But it had. Everything had. I closed the laptop, but the images burned behind my eyelids anyway. Her hair in his shower-wet t-shirt. Her bare ring finger. Her handwriting on a stranger's fridge. I wanted to wake her up right then. Shake her. Demand an explanation. But I didn't. Not yet. This was no longer about doubt or suspicion. This was about strategy. Because once you have the truth, the next step isn't shouting. It's deciding what you're going to do with it. That night, lying next to her in the dark, I listened to her breathing. She shifted in her sleep, reaching for me, her hand brushing my arm before she settled again. She smelled faintly of that musky new perfume. My stomach churned. I didn't move. I just stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds, feeling the weight of every photo, every message, every lie. The ring on her nightstand glinted in the faint light from the hallway. I wondered if she even noticed she'd stopped wearing it to bed. I wondered if Ryan knew she still lived here at all, or if she'd crafted an illusion for him too. One thing was certain. The mask had slipped. And once a mask slips, you can't unsee the face underneath. The next morning, she hummed as she made coffee, scrolling through her phone with a soft smile, like she didn't have a care in the world. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, my arms crossed. The urge to confront her burned in my chest like fire. But I held it in. Because now, I had what I'd been missing all along. Not suspicion. Not gut feelings. Not fragments. Proof. Irrefutable evidence. And proof changes everything. I thought the affair was the worst of it. I thought finding out Sarah had been living a second life with another man was rock bottom. I was wrong. 2 days after Kelly sent me the photos, she followed up with a message that would reshape everything I thought I knew about the woman I married. Jason, I'm not sure how to say this, so I'll just say it plainly. I believe Sarah has been involved in something much bigger than just cheating. Something financial. Something calculated. I've attached a zip folder with documents and a flash drive if you want to meet in person. Please be careful. I've seen enough to know this wasn't just about Ryan. I met Kelly at a small diner halfway between our neighborhoods. It was raining. One of those soft, constant drizzles that feels like background noise in a bad dream. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a manila folder and a sealed envelope on the table in front of her. Her eyes looked hollow, like she hadn't slept in days. Neither had I. Jason, she said when I slid into the booth across from her. I'm really sorry about all of this. I shook my head. You don't have to keep apologizing. You didn't do this. She slid the folder across the table. No, but I think you deserve to know exactly what she did do. I opened the folder slowly, not sure what to expect. The first thing I saw was a printed email thread. My eyes scanned it quickly. Subject, transfer request Mara Holdings. From Sarah Maddox to Martha Ellison at Chicago Holdings. The name stopped me cold. Martha Ellison. I looked up at Kelly. This name. She told me her mom died when she was 19. Kelly nodded grimly. She told Ryan the same thing. But that woman isn't dead. She's very much alive. And she's not just some random name. She owns at least 4 shell corporations. One of them, Mara Holdings. I flipped through the next few pages, transaction logs, tax forms, internal transfers between Sarah's personal checking account and business accounts linked to Chicago-based entities. In total, more than $112,000 had been funneled through these channels over the past year. Most of it from joint accounts, mine and Sarah's. What the hell is this? I asked, my voice dry. Kelly pushed the sealed envelope toward me. That's the flash drive. There's more on there. PDFs, bank statements, hidden folders she kept synced to a cloud drive. Took me a while to figure out the password. You know what it was? I didn't respond. Your name. Backwards. I stared at the drive for a long time before I picked it up. It was simple, black, unmarked. Nothing threatening about it, just plastic and metal. But it felt like holding a bomb. She's been siphoning money for over a year, Kelly said, voice low. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. It wasn't just for travel or hotels. There's a whole network here. Ryan said she handled admin stuff for his accounts. But I think she was doing more than admin. I think she was laundering his money. Or maybe her own. I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. It was one thing to be betrayed emotionally. But financially, strategically? I looked up Martha, Kelly continued. She's listed as CEO of a company in Chicago. But when you go deeper, it's all post office boxes and ghost addresses. No real business. No staff. No public website. It's a shell. And Sarah's been wiring money to it for months. I closed the folder slowly. My hands felt cold. I thought she was just cheating, I said. Just lying to me. That was enough. But this is a setup, Kelly said. That's what it is. I drove home in silence, the flash drive in my jacket pocket like a loaded *P***N. Sarah was out when I got back, probably at yoga or running errands. I didn't care. I went straight to my office, locked the door, and plugged the drive into my laptop. The folders were organized, disturbingly neat, like she'd been planning this a long time. There was a file titled Trustee Outline, Docs, another called Post-Division Plan, XLSX, and dozens of PDFs labeled with names I didn't recognize. Some of the folder names chilled me. Final Draft, Denver Property, Exit Strategy, J Retention Plan, and then there was one labeled simply Mother. I opened that one first. Inside were scanned letters from Martha Ellison, photos, even a birth certificate. She was definitely Sarah's mom, and she was very much alive. A photo of her dated just 3 months ago showed her standing outside an upscale apartment building in downtown Chicago. My wife had lied about her mother being dead. She'd invented a backstory to keep me from asking questions, and she'd kept that lie going for a decade. The file also included signed agreements between Sarah and Martha, referencing payments made in preparation for separation and asset division. That line stuck with me. In preparation for separation. It hit me then. She hadn't just been cheating on me emotionally or physically. She'd been preparing to leave me, carefully, surgically, while draining everything she could before I noticed. The exit strategy document confirmed it. Sarah had drafted a plan to initiate divorce proceedings at the end of Q4, with bullet points outlining the preferred timing after Jason's fiscal bonus posts, and a list of priorities. The phrasing read like a business memo. Maintain amicable tone through Q3. Avoid triggering Jason's suspicion until Chicago accounts are fully funded. Leverage Ryan as a transitional anchor. Emphasize Jason's emotional instability if needed. Do not initiate divorce until trustee structure is finalized and Denver listing is confirmed. Every line was more surreal than the last. But one note stuck out the most. Jason unlikely to resist. Pattern suggests passive conflict style. Used to advantage. Position self as exhausted spouse rather than aggressor. Avoid confrontation. I leaned back in my chair, hands shaking. I wasn't a person to her. I was a variable. Placeholder. Someone to be maneuvered around. She had been preparing for this, engineering it. Down to the emotional angle. Down to my reactions. She'd studied me like a project. The flash drive didn't just confirm her affair. It revealed a hidden life so much deeper, so much colder, than anything I'd imagined. And now I realized the ring on the napkin was only the first move in a much larger game. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my office, lights off, staring at the glow of the laptop screen, while the documents cycled like a carousel of betrayal. Every file I opened added another layer. Sarah hadn't just planned to leave. She hadn't just prepared for a clean financial exit. She had crafted an entire blueprint to dismantle me quietly, efficiently, and legally. I opened the file named Asset Movement 18MO Summary, XLSX. There were tabs labeled Accounts, Property, Trusts, Holdings, and one chillingly labeled Post-Dissolution Life. The spreadsheet logged every asset we had, joint savings, investments, equity in the house, even my life insurance, and detailed how each one was being moved, reclassified, or hidden. Several entries referenced transfers to businesses owned by Martha Ellison. Others noted payouts to a name I hadn't seen until now. Dan Keller. That one stopped me cold. Who the hell was Dan Keller? I ran a quick search through the rest of the drive and found a PDF labeled Dan Lease and Payments. Inside was a lease agreement for an apartment in Austin. Sarah was the guarantor. Monthly rent, $2,300. Paid through an account she opened just 3 months ago. Attached were scanned checks with her signature, sent to Dan. The memo line on one of them said, "For March, thank you." Thank you? I didn't know what was worse, the idea that there was another man, or that he wasn't even a secret. He was a line item, a budget entry. Dan Keller's name showed up again in a document called Hold Pattern. Maintain financial support for Dan through Q4. Discreet. No direct contact with Jason Risk. Chicago entity can absorb monthly until clean break. No direct contact with Jason Risk. I felt like I was reading a corporate espionage plan, not my wife's divorce journal. Then I opened a folder called Narrative. That's where everything changed. This folder was Sarah's personal war room. It included typed journal entries, drafted legal affidavits, and a file labeled Timeline, Emotional Distress. That one spelled out how she planned to position herself legally during the divorce. Jason's emotional unavailability documented since late 2022. Emotional neglect, passivity, tendency toward avoidance, position as reason for separation. Do not admit infidelity. Use counseling suggestion as moral high ground if confrontation occurs. Key phrases to include: I felt invisible. I tried to fix us. This wasn't sudden. Reading those lines made me feel like I was watching a car crash I was trapped inside of. She was rehearsing my downfall like a script. The more I read, the more I realized she'd been engineering her exit like a hostile takeover. One where I'd never see the blade until it was already in me. Everything I'd once thought was spontaneous, her tearful confessions, her need for space, the suggestion that we talk more honestly. It had all been manufactured. She had predicted my behavior down to my silence. She'd written I was likely to shut down, to avoid confrontation, that I would resist conflict to keep the peace. She wasn't wrong. There were even calendar screensh *TS, reminders titled things like, Rotate savings account to new bank, Q1. Secure Denver rental listing April. Life insurance update, remove J. I opened our joint account online. My chest tightened. Gone. Or nearly. The joint account we used to pay bills had been slowly siphoned. Not drained in one swoop, but piece by piece. Hundreds here, thousands there. Over 12 months, she'd withdrawn nearly $43,000. Most of which had been filtered into accounts I didn't even know existed. One transfer description read, Chicago Equity ACCT Martha Trust. It all matched the documents on the flash drive. I checked my email next. A search for Martha Ellison returned nothing. Same for Dan Keller. But then I found a thread titled, Regarding Policy Adjustment, Jason Maddox. It was from Sarah to a law office. She had requested to become sole beneficiary on my life insurance. Quietly, without telling me. The request hadn't gone through, thank God, but it had been initiated. The law firm had replied that joint consent was required due to the policy type. I guess she figured I wouldn't notice, or she planned to wait. Maybe she thought I'd be too confused or broken to fight back. Then came the most disturbing file of all. Divorce Pitch Strategy. It was a 2-page bullet point list. Short sentences. No fluff. Cold. Jason is exhausted, doesn't like conflict, won't fight unless cornered. Present decision as mutual. Frame it as long overdue. Speak softly. Be reasonable. Do not appear emotional or angry. Emphasize love/respect while pulling away. Use therapist if necessary to validate decision. Avoid legal escalation. Suggest mediation first. Downplay assets. Protect Chicago accounts at all costs. If Jason resists, pivot to moral high ground. Mention personal growth. Reframe betrayal as misalignment. Every sentence made my blood run colder. I wasn't in a marriage. I was in a chess match I didn't know had started. And I was already losing. That night, I sat on the living room floor with everything spread out in front of me. The flash drive, printed documents, my laptop, her folders. I stared at the ring I'd once left on that bar napkin. The symbol that had cracked everything open. I thought catching her with another man was the end. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a far more calculated plan. A financial and emotional erasure of me. Slowly, carefully, legally. She'd used every bit of my predictability against me. The way I avoid fights. The way I try to make peace. The way I never pry. She counted on me being quiet. Being reasonable. And for months I had been. But not anymore. When Sarah walked in, I was waiting. Calm. Documents stacked on the table. She tried to deflect. Accused me of spying, of twisting things. But the evidence was undeniable. Secret accounts, hidden leases, the financial bleed. Her face shifted, first denial, then fear. I said nothing cruel. Just, it's over. She cried, begged, blamed me. But I was already gone. This wasn't a marriage. It was a performance. And the curtain had finally dropped. I met Martha in a glass office in Chicago. She smiled like none of it mattered. Offered me silence in exchange for peace. But I'd already turned everything over to my lawyer. Within weeks, their network collapsed. Sarah lost her job. The shell companies dissolved. I sold the house and moved to Denver. Took a quiet job, kept my peace. The ring on that bar napkin? It wasn't just an ending. It was freedom. The moment I stopped surviving and started living.